Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you can tell by the title, we will be talking about a potential Arctic fall outbreak. Now I know the word Arctic may sound silly in fall, and obviously this won't be bringing negatives in terms of Fahrenheit across the United States. But the anomalies following this potential very large system that will be occurring next week could be extremely cold. As you can see, I have pulled up right now the European model predicting temperatures as far below as 20 to 30 degrees in terms of Fahrenheit. So many areas will be seeing their first frost and freezes way above schedule, potentially in early September. So let's start talking about this. So the last few days I have been focusing more on the actual storm system itself in my recent weather uploads, and today I want to focus more on the cold that will be following this system. Again, I think it's honestly fair to call it a fall Arctic outbreak because of just how cold this temperature will be. It won't be bringing snow or widespread frost across much of the United States, so if you're panicking about your garden, don't worry, it'll be all right. But certain areas across the upper Midwest will get very early frosts, and again, this is going to be occurring in the first week of September. Sometimes, and honestly, the past few years, usually we see 80s across many of these areas and 70s, not 40s. That could be happening during the day. However, I still want to show you this system because it's the thing that's going to be pumping this cold air in. I'm just not going to focus as much about it in today's video. So if you're wondering, when will this massive storm come through? So by Tuesday of next week, notice we have a cold front developing across southern Canada, across Manitoba, Saskatchewan, into portions of Ontario. This thing, according to the European, which has been trending in the last few days, more and more further south with this thing. It initially developed the system across Ontario and into Quebec. It now develops this system across Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota, and basically takes that area of circulation and stalls it out for a few days across the upper Midwest. So you can see Wednesday, it tilts, becoming positively tilted and then almost completely just vertical, right? And as that happens, you could see the 540 line, which for those folks that don't know, that is the freezing line. Because this system will be occurring pretty early on in the season, it won't really have a massive snow swath to it, but you already know that with a system like this, if this was a little colder, you would have snow all along here. This would be kind of like that comma shape. If there were strong enough winds, that would be potentially a blizzard. It's going to be rain. It's going to be a cold, dreary rain. There could be some snow showers and snowflakes mixing in to some of these areas. It's going to have a very powerful cold front to the south of it. This system, again, this is now Wednesday and Thursday of September 4th. For any of the charts I show you, you can see the date and time right here listed in the right hand corner, and note that this thing spins pretty much into itself. Look, it drops to 989 millibars of low pressure, which by any means isn't a record. I think the record for the lowest millibar reading across the United States is 951 across the continental United States. So that's not going to be close to breaking that record. But because of a high pressure that is squeezing it from the west, these winds are going to be very strong, according to the European here. Now again, we are still pretty far out, but this could change. But at this point, the models have been honing in on this for a few days, and every single day it becomes a little more stronger and a little bit more consistent. Now again, as I mentioned, this system is going to be pumping cold air into the United States because of its massive wind field with the help of this high pressure. So this is what allows not only the cold air to swoop in very far south, but the actual placement of the storm allows the cold air to kind of have a starting point that's already pretty far south for this time of the year. We usually don't see systems like this till, I would say, late September, early October, but instead we are getting this in early September, the first few days of September. So notice that this thing eventually weakens as it spins across again the upper Midwest for almost a complete day there. It's stalled out. There will be very heavy rain with this on the northwest side of it, and it moves away. But again, in its wake, we are looking at very cold temperatures. Out ahead of the system, we will be looking at cooler temperatures across much of the lower United States, remnant of that recent cool down we just had. But we will be looking at very warm temperatures across much of southern Canada out ahead of this system. You combine those two things, and this system has a perfect environment to develop into a rapidly intensifying cyclone. Notice across the northwest and southwestern Canada during this whole time, you will be most likely dealing with heat. Earlier, the models were potentially hinting that the system could develop further west, and that would have allowed more cold air across the northwest and southwestern Canada. At this point, the models have moved away from this scenario and are now favoring it more across the Midwest and southern Canada. As I put this forward now, so this is Tuesday, right when that system initially begins to develop and intensify from that cold front into an actual cyclone. And we already have a cool air footprint across southern Canada, and this thing only intensifies. You can see that by Wednesday, September 3rd, this thing is delivering very cold temperatures to much of the northwest. I should say much of the North Plains. The Northwest is going to be very warm. Much of the North Central Plains and into potentially Manitoba and Saskatchewan and Ontario there. We could see the well-defined warm front and cold front of this system. Here's that cold air, which again, because of how below average this is, I would not be surprised to see some snow mixing in on that range. So potentially an early snow across some of those areas as well. And as this thing spreads into Wednesday and Thursday, we see anomalies that are reaching potentially negative 30 Fahrenheit below average. Not negative 30 Fahrenheit on the thermometer reading, but 30 degrees below average. I probably should have worded that better. Take a look at some of these 2-meter temperature shaded. We see 40s, not during the night, but during the day. Lower 40s. And this is going to definitely cause frost and freezes across the northern United States during the night. So if you have sensitive plants, tomatoes, pumpkins, especially squash, those are very sensitive for frosts. You will probably either want to cover those, or if you don't, yeah, that might be the end of the growing season for some of these areas. The models often do a pretty bad job of underestimating where these pockets of frost and freezes can develop. Now, I don't think it will be widespread massive freeze just yet. It's a little too early for that, but some areas that do typically, catch cool pockets of air early on in the season, you are definitely under risk. Back briefly to this cyclone, I want to say that by Friday and Saturday, this thing is going to be out of here. It's gone. It's going to be producing showers and activities of various cyclonic nature on the backside of all these cyclones. We have usually squalls, different thunder showers, and because it's still occurring fairly on in the year, I would not be surprised to even see some isolated thunderstorms across Ontario and Quebec there. But the cold air is going to be the main story behind this, as again, it kind of fails to really dig deep, this cyclone itself, and bring precipitation further south. Aside from that cold front, you will be feeling that cold weather though. I'm going to touch now briefly on the GFS model. This model earlier initially picked up the system a little better than the European. Now it seems to be struggling a bit more, but regardless, it agrees with the European in the form that there will be a lot of cold air behind this system. The GFS doesn't spin up a cyclone as well as the European does. It's more of a cold front type system, but regardless, you can see that the anomalies are still very cold for, again, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, for across much of the central and northern United States. Across the northwest and southwestern Canada, you will be unfortunately dealing with heat. Do note that ahead of the system, you also will be experiencing very warm temperatures across southeastern Canada and into portions of the northeast. Now, this cold air doesn't hang around for too long, it seems, at least the intensity of it. There will be some reinforcing shots potentially as more systems come through, but it's going to be more of a sharp and brief but really sharp cool down. And again, the GFS also in line with the European on some of these anomalies. I'm going to take a look at this day. So this is now Thursday, September 4th. 2-meter temperature shaded air temperatures. You could see widespread 50s, even 40s across the northern United States. And then you could see the GFS shows frosts across a good portion of their Minnesota, Wisconsin, the UP, the Dakotas even possibly, and all of really most of Ontario there, at least, yeah, most of Ontario getting in on some frost there. The difference is, one difference with the GFS is compared to the European, is that it shows a lot more potential snow out of the system further up north. So again, as I mentioned, this system that the GFS shows is more of a cold frontal boundary at first. It does develop into a cyclone eventually, but it's much further on across Quebec. So the models are still kind of battling it out. Again, the European is more of a single system that swoops out of here. The GFS is more of several waves of a cold front, and one of those pieces eventually evolves into a storm, as you can see right here. Pretty powerful and strong one, but later on, this is closer now to Saturday, September 6th, while the European at this point already swept this system out of here. The GFS is now just introducing it, and again, bringing quite a bit of snow potentially across Quebec. And again, following that, we have quite a bit of cold air. So for more confidence, I don't want to just look at two models. I want to show you the ensemble. So these are a compilation of many models combined into one graphic. First, let's take a look at the GEFS. This is a group of models that is part of the GFS family, and you can see that their cool footprint really intensifies again around that Wednesday into Thursday time frame of next week. The cold air really probably is going to peak around that Thursday time frame of next week. Thursday night, Wednesday night into Thursday, and then Thursday night into Friday. And you can see that the GEFS anomalous footprint is very significant. The European ensembles, they are also in very, very good agreement on the Wednesday and Thursday time frame for a very, very strong reinforcing cold shot of air. The fact that this is almost 150 to 200 hours out and the ensembles are showing such a strong cold footprint is indicative of just how potent this probably will be. Let's move away from the models and take a look at the Climate Prediction Center. So this is a U.S. government organization that basically makes outlooks that are 6 to 10 days for the temperature and precipitation, and they have another one 8 to 14 days. So notice that from that 3rd to that 7th time frame of September, the Climate Prediction Center is definitely very, very bullish on that cold air, showing quite a high confidence of below average conditions across much of these areas, again mainly tied with that cyclone, and that is showing you that this is not just the models being crazy. The Climate Prediction Center agrees with them. The last thing I want to briefly address is the precipitation that will fall with this system. We are now looking at the European model, so again, remember this is the model that shows the one I showed you at the beginning prior to the GFS, and it shows a more coalesced single strong cyclone that moves away. The GFS is the one that kind of shows it more disorganized. If the European model were to come true, wherever that comma-shaped head of that cyclone would end up, would produce a lot of rain. Again, normally they do produce a lot of snow in these areas during winter and late fall. Still quite a bit of precipitation, but there's not much of a flooding concern because it's snow. Once it melts, that could be a little bit of a concern, but because this is occurring so early on in the year with moisture that is still so abundant, there's going to be a lot of moisture in this, and even a cold front that sweeps across some of these areas, there's going to be pockets of random 2 to 3 inches, probably where the thunderstorms train a little bit or they line up. Not everyone will see heavy rain on the cold front side of it, but yeah, again, on that actual cyclonic backside of this system, there could be many areas that pick up 5 to even 6, 7 inches of rain. So in terms of centimeters, that would be over 12, 13, 14 centimeters of rain if you live in Canada. It would be, regardless, whichever way you put it, a very, very strong system. That is basically all I have for you. If you have a garden like I do, definitely get some preparations underway for your sensitive crops, and if you have, say, tropical plants that you brought in on the outside from the inside for the growing season, I would definitely take those inside for at least those few days. This doesn't mean, that we have winter coming. There's going to be snow from the next snow system across the upper plains. There probably, in fact, will be a heat wave that develops into late September across the same areas that we'll be seeing frost and early snow with this system. That is basically it for today's video. Hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you got something out of it, and I'll catch you all on the next episode. See ya. Bye.